So this report brings together two of the most important topics facing the world of major projects today. So that's the role of major projects in delivering sustainability goals and the massive opportunity offered through data analytics to radically improve project performance. So neither are easy. Firstly, major projects are inherently carbon intensive, and secondly, the data required for effective analytics is not easily obtained. As we've heard, sort of major projects span multiple organizations, each with their own individual objectives and separate data strategies. So that's why these two topics featured recently in annual conferences held by the Major Projects Association's members, and why we established working groups, and also why we support the study, and in particular why we support the task force. Next slide, please, Yoshi. So just want to provide a bit of context. So ahead of the World Economic Forum's 50th annual meeting in Davos last year, there was around 800 or so global experts and decision makers, and they named inaction on climate change and extreme weather as the greatest long-term threats to the world economy. But despite numerous sort of world conferences and agreements, that still remains true today. So the first international agreement, if we sort of trace back, goes to Rio in '92, and then we've had sort of annual conferences almost every year since then, called COPs, or Conference of the Parties, and they resulted in sort of further significant agreements, the most notable ones being Kyoto in '97 and Paris in 2015, and the latter one set out targets for decarbonisation. So just to highlight how seriously national governments are taking the issue of decarbonisation, there are now at least 9 countries who have set legally binding targets to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, including the UK. The UK has additionally planned to cut carbon emissions by 68% by 2030, so bringing some of those targets forward further still. And after the inauguration, Joe Biden, who's gone back to sticking with the Paris Agreement, has said that they're looking to achieve net zero by 2032. And China, the world's second largest economy, is now saying 2060. So what's that got to do with projects? Well, the urgency which drive these targets, and particularly the set out in Paris and subsequent sort of ambitious goals by national governments, means they cannot be met by incremental changes alone. They need step changes and transformation, and that's of our infrastructure, of our systems, dare I say, of our society. So we need projects to deliver those step changes and transformation. However, projects, and in particular infrastructure projects, are inherently carbon intensive, and indeed cement is the second most used substance on the planet after water. And I've read somewhere something like it would be the third, if it was a nation, it would be the third most polluting nation on its own. So we need to change our approach to projects. And our study also found there's an intersect between the world of projects and environmental sustainability and corporate governance, or ESGs. And traditionally, these ESG objectives have been set to reduce the negative impact of an organization's activities. But to deliver the sort of step changes we're talking about, these sort of transformational change, the new generation of ESG objectives are seeking to do much more than that, and they're looking to change the behavior of the organization's entire value chain, including sort of financial vehicles that incentivize change and monitor impacts. The study found numerous examples of this. Close to home, Network Rail's recent ESG objectives make it the first railway organization anywhere in the world to commit to cutting emissions to the extent of limiting global warming by 1.5 degrees, and that's through its own activities, and importantly through the activities of its supply chain. So putting requirements, science-based requirements, on organizations that will work with it. So on the financing of projects, the study also highlights its importance, citing the former governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, and he had an initiative called COP26 Private Finance Agenda, which he set out last year, which was meant to be ahead of COP26 taking place, that was deferred to November of this year. And indeed, the Chancellor of the UK also set out finance as a critical enabler of net zero goals, highlighting this when he launched the UK's first green gilts. So next slide, please, Yoshi. So moving on from that wider context, then sort of focusing in on projects. So the study showed that of the 100 or so organisations that were consulted, that data was a key concern, and that's both in terms of understanding the project's carbon usage and carbon impacts, and also on improving their performance. And as you can see here, sort of 82% had either deployed or in the process of deploying digital workflows across their projects, but of those, sort of 63% of them said that they were using 4 or more separate systems, and only 36% of them had a sort of a connected data environment. Now, just to put that, that's within an enterprise. So if we sort of look further outside of that enterprise, data flows across multiple organizations working on major projects becomes even more disjointed and siloed, and that came out through the study. So the report shows an aspiration for major projects to shift from being sort of part of the problem, particularly in relation to cement, to being a key piece of the solution to addressing climate change and the nature emergency as well. And this report also shows that whilst progress is being made, the world of major projects is struggling to tackle barriers preventing data analytics being adopted at pace and to its full potential. So very much aligning to the vision set out in the task force last September. So to overcome the barriers, we need to transition from being a sort of what we call a passive adopter of data analytics, and that's typically characterized by the use of sort of general business applications, to more active pursuit of data analytics, specifically for major projects. And some examples of those have been highlighted in the report. So to seize this opportunity provided by data analytics to improve the sustainability of project delivery and their outcomes, we need collective leadership, and also we need an open data environment. So 2 of the core objectives that were set out in the Project Data Analytics Task Force white paper last year. So the urgency we face means the world of projects needs to step up and deliver big improvements soon. And that's the gauntlet that's been thrown down.